All right. Hey, everyone. My name is Brian. I'm a pastor. I'm an executive pastor at a church just south of Boston. I'm originally from Anchorage, Alaska. And when I was in fourth grade, I almost got eaten by a bear. That can be a different story for some time. And then I moved to Boston for college. And that's where I really started to have friends that were not Christians. I kind of grew up in a somewhat larger church and kind of in a Christian bubble. And yeah, moving out here to Boston, I had friends that did not know Jesus. And I got essentially called into church planting here in Boston. And so I went home for a summer and then I bought a one-way ticket back to Boston. I helped start Grace Church my sophomore year, my junior year. And that was back in 2005. And then since then, the big dream for our church was if we could get to 300 maybe one day, we might be one of the larger churches south of Boston. And now we're running about 3,500 in 4 locations. And then our heartbeat has always been church planting. So we've planted an additional 13 churches out of our church where we have raised up people. We've used this leadership pipeline that I'm going to show you guys. We've used that pipeline to help send full leadership teams in those church plants. And then I'm just personally passionate about helping busy pastors find the margin that they need. So today I want to share with you this leadership pipeline. And really it's a lot of things that I learned the hard way over now 20 years of being an executive pastor. So I paid a lot of stupid tax so that you don't have to. Healthy churches, run on 3 rails: evangelism, discipleship, and leadership development. We're reaching people, we're teaching the people that we've reached, and we're equipping those people to go out and do ministry. And so I want to really focus in on just this leadership development piece today. Some goals that we have for our time together. We'll talk about the why behind a leadership pipeline, what exactly a leadership pipeline is, what it's not, when should you build it, and then we'll also look at how to build it. That's where we'll spend the most of our time, is in that how. Just some quick numbers here. There was a recent study a couple years ago. I believe it was a Barna study on pastors, and 71% of pastors identified that they do not have any plan for leadership development. They have no systematic way of finding, developing, and empowering leaders in their church. Healthy churches usually spend between 2 and 5% of their budget on leadership development. If you think about those 3 tracks, you can really put your budget into 3 different buckets: evangelism, discipleship, and leadership development. Sadly, most churches don't actually have a leadership development line item. But healthy churches, we found that healthy churches are spending anywhere from 2 to 5% of their budget on developing leaders. And then the pipeline that I'm going to share with you, I've done multiple talks. I've coached a lot of churches, and then I started a resource called Ministry Library, and that has helped over 4,000 churches at this point use this particular pipeline. I'm curious what you guys would say that you spend on leadership development. Go ahead and put that in the chat. I'd like to see what, if anything, that you guys are putting in. Originally, when Grace Church started, we didn't have anything in leadership development, and we slowly just kept increasing it. And now we spend about 8% of our budget on leadership development, between 5 and 8%. All right, so why does leadership development fail? Usually when I go and I start talking with a pastor, they'll say something like, I've tried to develop leaders, it just doesn't work. Or, yeah, that's great, Brian. I've tried it several times and it fails each time. And so here's some common reasons why leadership development fails in churches. One is they really do leadership placement, not leadership development. They want God to just deliver to them a ready-made leader that maybe comes from another church that's a mature Christian that can help them do things. But I think God's actually given you what you need. You just need to develop those leaders. So it's not about placement or hoping that a mature Christian comes and helps you lead. It's about actually finding those people and developing them. Another reason that leadership development fails is because a lot of churches are more reactive than they are proactive. And so what ends up happening is pastors have a lot of urgent things on their plate, and they don't spend the time in the important area, they spend it in the urgent area. And so the important things kind of get pushed off until they become urgent. And leadership development is one of those things that isn't urgent until it is. It's important. And so we kind of push it off. We kick the can down the curb and we wait. And then we end up being reactive and not proactive when it comes to leadership development. And then the most common reason is there's no simple system that churches have to reproduce leaders. Um, Complexity will always bring problems. When complex things break, there's a lot of problems. But simple systems are an easy way to scale. And so the more simple your system is, the easier the easier it is for other areas of ministry to implement that system. And you'll start to see leaders growing in a bunch of different areas in the church. Um, if you I mean you don't have to do leadership development, right? A lot of churches don't, but if you don't, there's a real cost um, to it. One is, and most pastors feel this in that same study that said 71% of pastors don't have a leadership development. I think it was around some high 80%, 87%, 89%, something like that, said that they were either burned out or on the edge of burnout. Um, and I think that's because they don't have a system for leadership development, everything falls on them. They become the bottleneck. Every decision has to run through them. And because they're doing everything, they're getting burnt out. But if you could imagine a scenario in which you had 20 different leaders throughout the church that were doing ministry, and then you were just focusing on the things that only you have to do, or only the things that you wanted to do, that would be incredibly freeing. The other cost of not doing anything is the church becomes stuck. Um, if there's no leaders, then there's only so much ministry that a church can do. And churches end up plateauing and stalling out because there's just not enough people to carry it forward. Um, there's a couple of biblical models that we can look at for leadership development. Obviously, Moses, where Jethro told Moses how to break up um, the nation. Nehemiah, we always go back to that for leadership lessons on vision casting and organization. If you zoom out on Jesus's ministry and kind of do a meta narrative of what's happening, you'll see that Jesus used this, I call it the 4T method, but he used this method of training and development where he would teach something, then he would talk about it with his disciples, right? So he would teach something, he would have a group discussion, they'd talk about it, they'd go and apply it, and then they'd come back and tell him what happened. And so you see this a lot in the ministry of Jesus, where he would teach something, he would pull the disciples aside. What do you think about this? What are they saying about that? They would have this discussion. He'd send them out. He sent the 72. He did that two different times. Then they would come back and he would say, how did it go? And he said, well, we couldn't cast out these demons. We don't know why. Then Jesus would use that. It's a loop. He would use that and then say, well, some things can only happen through prayer and fasting. Another example of this biblical model of leadership development and multiplication that a lot of people don't necessarily connect right away to leadership is the parable of the talents. Sadly, most pastors have flipped the script in that parable. In that parable, there were three servants. One, he had 5 talents, 2 talents, and 1 talent. The two servants that were called faithful were the ones that went out and multiplied. They doubled what the master had given them. They went out and they risked something to multiply what God had already given them. And then God calls them the faithful servants. But sadly, most pastors have flipped that, and most pastors have a mentality of sitting on what God gave them just so they don't lose any more people. And that's the servant that God actually called wicked and slothful, the one that didn't go out and multiply what they had. All right. So, what is a leadership pipeline? Um, a leadership pipeline is a simple system for you to identify potential leaders, how to spot them, and we can go into the details of this in a little bit, but how do you spot them, what you're looking for. It's a systematic way to invest in them. So you're going to find them, you're going to start investing in them, developing them, and then it's again a simple system for delegating meaningful ministry. So it's not just about developing people to do small tasks. The goal is to hand off ministry responsibility, ministry weight to other people to carry so that more ministry can get done. Um, what a leadership pipeline is not. A leadership pipeline is not discipleship, um, but it's not just leadership. Okay, and it's not a quick fix. What I mean by it's not discipleship is you can be a growing disciple of Jesus, getting more spiritually mature, and not climb the leadership ladder. Um, those two things are separate. A lot of pastors will um, incorrectly merge those two things together and will say, in order to become a better disciple, you should start leading people. But you don't see that in the life of Jesus. There's lots of people that followed Jesus that were Christians, the woman at the well, um, the naked demon possessed guy in the tombs. He actually wanted to come with Jesus on the boat, and Jesus said no. Was that guy not a Christian? He just wasn't a disciple. The disciples were the leaders that Jesus was developing. And so it's not discipleship. A great example of that is we have someone on our elder team who's a member of the church, but he's serving, but he's not a leader in any service team. He's an elder. He's very spiritually mature. He's radically generous with his time and his money. He's wise. I get personal mentoring from him, but he's actually in no leadership position in any of our ministry teams. Does that mean that Carlos is not a mature Christian? No, not at all. So leadership and discipleship are very different. I really like how Larry Osborne puts it. He says, we've kind of made discipleship super complex. Discipleship is really just what's your next step of obedience, right? Just what's the next step of obedience? That's a disciple. Where leadership is what's our next step of sacrifice? We give up certain things to lead. We stop doing some things and we start doing other things. So that's what a leadership pipeline is not. A lot of questions I'll get wrapped around leadership pipeline is like, when should I start a leadership pipeline? So I know what a leadership pipeline is. In a little bit, we'll go through the specifics of things, but like, when do I actually start it? When's the best time? Well, the best time was, years ago, because it takes time to develop leaders. And so the second best time would be today. And if you feel any of these three things that I listed on this slide, if you feel any of those or something like that in your church, then I mean, a leadership pipeline is what you should be working on, right? If your team is stretched too thin, either you or people on your team are feeling burned out, then it's definitely time to start a leadership pipeline. That's a symptom of too few people doing too many things, right? So we need to broaden the base of leadership. If you're consistently trying to fill the same roles, like the back door is just as wide open as the front door for leadership development. So as you're getting more volunteers or more leaders in your system, more people are falling out, right? They're not being developed. They're not catching the vision. So you would need a leadership pipeline to make sure that you kind of plug the holes in that leaky bucket. And if you don't have a clear path to grow leaders, then definitely a leadership pipeline is what you need. All right. So how do we build a leadership pipeline? We're going to spend the majority of our time on this. I'm going to put in the chat um, a link to this graphic here. Um, this graphic, you can print it off. So I just put the link in the chat. You can print this off and think of this. A lot of you have probably done Financial Peace University. My wife and I have led Financial Peace University for years. And one of the things that Dave Ramsey says with when doing the budget is you do the budget on paper first. Every dollar has to have a place, and then when you get done with it, you probably didn't do it right. So you're going to end up, the expectation is you're probably going to sit down and do the budget when you do it the first time. You might end up doing it like 10 different times until you figure out the budget that works for you. It's the same thing with this leadership pipeline. Go ahead and print off 10 copies of this paper. You're going to fill it out multiple times until you feel like, oh man, this is the one that really fits. Or you'll fill it out and you'll tweak some things here or there. So the first thing on how to build a budget is you build it on paper first. Um, Fill in the blanks, figure out what works, build it. You'll build it actually, you'll fill it in from the top down. So you'll fill it from level 6 and then you'll fill in all the blanks until you get to the bottom. The next thing here is, well, there you go. You fill it from so two things. I know I sound like I just contradict myself. When you fill it out on paper, you design it from the top down. When you actually go to fill up the pipeline with people, you do it from the bottom up. You start to bring people at the bottom level and you start to bring them to the next rung. And then you bring those people to the next rung. So that's what I mean by fill it from the bottom, not fill in the blanks, but you would actually design it from the top down and then fill it from the bottom up. Next thing here is you're going to put your name on every single level until you identify or train someone. When we first built this out, we did it as a team. There's actually a book called Leadership Pipeline from Ram Charan, and it's a business book. You don't have to read it. I read it for you, and this is almost everything that's in this is from that book. But it reads like a textbook. And what he would actually say is that there's 7 levels of leadership, but he's talking about like multinational corporations and stuff. In here, there's 6. The bottom one would be like your volunteers, and the top one would be like the lead pastor, or depending on how you're structured, you may have an elder team or something that sits at the very top. But what you want to do is, like, we filled ours out using that book and some other resources. We filled our pipeline out as a leadership team in about 2 days. But then it took us 3 years to fill it up. Does that make sense? So we built it in a few days. It took us a few years to fill it up. And literally, I wrote my name on every level. I'm not the lead pastor, I'm the executive pastor. So starting at level 5, I wrote my name at level 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And so as more volunteers got added to the team, I was able to raise up a team leader, that level 2 spot. And so then I kind of backed myself out of all of these levels. And it took us in some areas we were able to fill it a lot faster. Other areas we were not. And so it took us about some we were able to fill up in about a year and a half, maybe. And the longest one, I think, took us about 4 years to actually fill up the pipeline from the bottom up, literally identifying people, training them to the next level, letting them do a really good job at that, and then raising them to the next level, letting them do a good job at that, raising them to the next level. And so now all 4 of our locations have a fully functioning leadership pipeline from level 1 to level 6 across all locations, across all ministries. And then when we're able to plant churches, we plant them with a full leadership pipeline as well. Next one, and this is important as you start to fill it, you're gonna feel the tension of wanting to let people skip the line. You're gonna feel the tension of, do I really have to to pull them from level one to level two? Can I just start them at level three? Um, you can do that. I'm telling you from personal experience, we tried that and it blew up in our face. By not letting them go through the process, you end up shortcutting some of their development. They miss some of the vision. They miss some of the specific trainings that they would get, and they miss the reason why those levels are important. And so what ends up happening is it feels good to you because you checked things off the box and your name is not on a certain level anymore. But then what ends up happening is a year or two down the road, that person's area of ministry just blows up because you've shortcutted their development process. And so that happened in two of our locations, actually. One of our directors, which is what we call a level four leader, shortcutted that process and moved people from level one to level three. And a year later, they all quit. And she was, stressing out major because she had let them jump the line essentially, and they were doing too much. They didn't develop other people. They missed a whole key area of what it means to be a level three leader because they hadn't gone through the process. Another thing that you'll see here on this printout is there's the six levels, and each level needs a name, and that name should be consistent across all areas of ministry, right? So if in one area of ministry it's called a team leader, but in another area of ministry you call them a team captain, and then another area of ministry you call them coordinators, it gets really hard, especially as your church starts to grow, to have the ability to communicate about leadership development. And so you want consistent naming across all ministries and all levels. But the other thing you'll notice is on this printout on the right-hand side, there's this grayed out kind of thing over here by the title. This is the role. Um, the role of a level one leader, whatever it is that you call them, their role is to lead themselves well. They're not leading anyone else, but they need to lead themselves well. Um, the role of a level two leader is to lead others. They're only going to lead maybe 5 to 7 people that are under them, but they need to lead others well. This level three, we call it a ministry coach, but you could call it whatever. There's lots of different names that people call it, but the role of this level is to develop leaders. Um, they are literally coaching and developing these level two leaders. Level four, their main role is developing developers. You can kind of see what's going on here, right? The main role of this role is to take care, develop, and and empower the ones directly below them. It gets a little bit different here, where we get to a level five. For our church, we call this a staff pastor or a location pastor. This is building systems. And then the main role of a lead pastor or a lead team is to build culture. And so you can kind of see this leading yourselves, leading others, developing leaders and developing developers, and then you're building systems and you're building culture. So there's these 6 levels we just talked about, but you'll see those are the 3 kind of phases: leading, developing, and building. Um, what ends up happening is these first 2 levels, um, the um, the value that you are bringing and the um, appreciation that you're receiving is mainly based on what you're doing, the tasks that you are doing. When you get to this level, that switches from this is more task based, and now you're more relationship based in this second phase. You're developing people. You are now managing multiple people who are managing people. There's a lot of relational conflict that comes in here, conflict resolution that ends up happening in here. So this phase is identified as leading through relationships. Down here is leading through example, leading through tasks. This here is you're leading through relationships. When you get up to here, now you're leading through the systems that you're building. And this pipeline could actually be, you could map this pipeline to where churches get stuck. Because if a pastor were to put their name on all of these levels, and if a pastor is not leading themselves well, the church is going to be capped at a lower level. If they start to lead others well, but they're not developing leaders, that church is going to be capped at another level. If they're developing leaders, but they're not really in that multiplication phase of leaders, again, that's going to cause a church to cap out if their main leader is not multiplying. You can start to multiply, but if you're not building good systems for that, you're going to end up stalling out at another level. So you can kind of see how this pipeline would map to where churches get stuck and what part of the pipeline they're stuck at. Pipelines get clogged in these transitions, right? Pipelines don't get clogged in the straightaways, they get clogged in these transitions. So those are the 6 levels and the 6 phases. This transition, like I said, this is where it gets clogged. So you're going to actually, it's called train to the transition. And so this transition from level 1 to level 2, when you identify who you might want to raise up here, you'll train them to that transition. There's this CC is for core competencies. We won't have time to really cover this too much in depth, but the core competency is something that you would say, if this person has this thought process or this mindset about something, then I can train everything else around them, whatever it means for your church to be a team leader or a level 2 leader. I can train them to do that. But if they don't have this core competency, there's no amount of training that really is going to help them, do a great job. I'll give you a really common core competency for this level 1, leading yourself. Level 1 core competency a lot of churches choose is time management, because if you can't show up on time to your ministry obligations, there's really nothing else that I can train you, right? Like if you're working in the parking lot, or if you're a greeter, or you're in the kids ministry and you can't show up 20 minutes early. For our church, we show up 20 minutes early for a huddle. If you can't show up 20 minutes early, I really can't train you to do anything else. If you if you work in the parking lot and you come 15 minutes late to service every week, it doesn't matter the amount of training that I do for you. It just doesn't work. If you're a Sunday school teacher and you're showing up 30 minutes late every week, there's no amount of teaching or training that I could do. You just will not succeed at this level. So that's what a core competency would be. And so you're going to look for those core competencies in the level below you and then train to that transition. Now, a common question would be, well, we'll cover this in a second. To recap these 3 phases, the leading, developing, and building, there's 2 tough transitions, and you'll see this on the printout. These darker transitions right here are the 2 toughest transitions. This one right here is the toughest. You're going from task-oriented leadership, example-oriented leadership, to relational leadership. It's just a different skill set, and quite often we end up promoting people too fast. This was this idea of letting people skip the levels. We let them skip this level. This was the example I'm thinking of was specifically in kids ministry. They were a great team member, and so we made them a coach. And we skipped this. They went from, you're doing really good individually contributing, but now I need you to lead 2 or 3 different teams, and each team has 3 or 4 people in it. That's just a completely different skill set, and we set that person up to fail, because this is the single hardest transition, to go from a good doer of things to a good leader of people. To take the church out of this, if you've ever worked outside the church, you've probably seen this a lot, where a manager gets promoted above what they're actually able to do, and it kind of falls apart. In Ram Sharon's book, he actually talks about this. He uses the example of a coder, a software developer, where, let's say Kenny is a great software developer and he writes really great code. And so we go, man, Kenny's really good. We should make him a leader of a team. He should have a team of 5 to 7 coders with him. And over time, we see that Kenny's team just creates, amazing pieces of software, mostly because Kenny's a rock star coder. The team is great, yes, but Kenny is a really good doer. So we say, man, we should promote Kenny to be over all of our development teams. What happens then is Kenny stops coding and he starts leading through people. And now you've lost the thing that actually was what caught your eye with Kenny because you didn't recognize the transition from example leadership to relational leadership. And then what ends up happening is 6 months, 8 months down the road, everything's falling apart. And you're like, why is this not working? I thought Kenny was a great coder. He is a great coder. He's just not a good leader. He needs to be trained to lead through other people. So those are the two tough transitions. The other one is you're going from relational leadership to systematic leadership. And again, that's just a different mindset on how to do those things. You'll also see that this S and E here, these are for skills and expectations. Every level has this title, it has a core competency, and it has a skill and expectations. Skills are things that you can train to. You can actually have a training about this thing. Expectations are things that you either have or you don't have. There's no wiggle room. And a good example of skills and expectations for this level one, this team leader, a skill would be, let's say for our kids ministry, a skill for our check-in team, a skill might be that you know how to operate our check-in iPads, right? That's a skill. I can train you on how to run this check-in area. An expectation would be that you can show up 20 minutes early. I can't really train you on how to do that. That's an expectation. Another expectation that comes up a lot in questions, people will ask, well, where does membership fall in a leadership pipeline? For Grace Church, we put a membership as an expectation here at level 2. So our thought process is if you are going to be leading other people, then you need to be a member of our church. That's an expectation. I can't train you. Here's a training on how to become a member of Grace Church. You can go to a membership class, but I can't like train you how to do that. That's something you either want to do or you don't want to do. And then those skills and expectations build on each other, right? So the skills that you would need for a level 2, you should have the skills of level 1 and level 2. So they start to build on each other. Oh, that was it. The skills and expectations. I'll do one more thing on these skills and expectations. Imagine these skills and expectations as like an upside down pyramid. There should be less skills and expectations at the bottom and more skills and expectations as you go up the leadership pipeline. And the reason for that, this was another stupid tax that we had, was we put a lot of skills and expectations lower early in our pipeline. And what we found was there was a long lag time between when someone said, I would like to volunteer, and then when they could actually be on the team, because there were so many skills and expectations that they had to jump through in order to get on the team. So really think about this as what's the minimum skills and expectations that they need to join the team. So for like kids ministry, we do have policies on bathrooms and emergencies. If the fire alarm goes off, we do have policies for those, but you don't have to know those day one. You can learn those as you go, but a skill to join the team is almost nothing. Like really passing a background check is about all we have as skills or expectations for any team at that lower level, because we want people to get on the team as fast as possible. So that's how to build a leadership pipeline. So we can go to some Q&A here. I have not been paying attention to the chat, so maybe Kenny can jump in here and catch me up here.
I think we've got everything covered except for this one last one. We did list the link to the worksheet. If you need it, let me know and we can publish it again. In fact, I'm just going to put this back into the chat just in case you guys want to download and use this. Oops, that's not it. You want to use this link again to actually use with your team. There it goes. So you can print this out and then you can actually go through it with this actual webinar replay So again, the number one call is to start those conversations internally. If you have any questions about those stages, phases, all the tiers, let us know. The level system, I think, is very, very critical in terms of your worldview of how you approach the structure of your organization also. I'm going to go to Peter's question. That's a little bit of a transition, Brian. And he says, thank you. Do you have a curriculum for the training required to move leaders from one level to the next? Like, how would I accomplish that? If I'm a pastor and I buy into the system that you're talking about, that you've installed at your church and others have across the country, what does that process look like? Could you just talk that through?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things. One is on the pipeline, the lower levels of the pipeline, there's two types of development that you're doing, and there's two types of trainings. So the lower levels are using mostly um, actual trainings, right? Whether it's books, blogs, whatever. Every church is unique. So those skills that you would need to train to that transition, especially in each ministry, are going to be unique. Um, but then you also have onboarding training, which most churches have, but they don't do really well. And then almost no church that I've talked to has what I call ongoing training. So just because they join the team, what are you training them to do now? And so, like I said, every church is going to be unique, and every ministry is going to be unique. If I can go back, um, um, this dotted line right here that you see here, this is called the 90-10 rule. Everything below this dotted line, so these first two levels, 90% of the skills and expectations will be unique to every ministry. When you get above this line, you are now getting into relational leadership. 90% will be the same above that line. And so you can imagine the skills and expectations required for the parking lot for a team member or a team leader are very different than what the kids ministry needs, and is very different than what life group leaders or small group leaders need, and is very different than special needs ministry, and is very different than your men's ministry, and is very different than the cafe. So all those things are very different. So all that to say, we do have a set of trainings, but they are geared towards this level 3 and up, because this level 1 and level 2 are very unique to every church and every ministry in that church. Even at Grace Church, we have 4 locations. Some of those things are unique to a location in a ministry, especially kids ministry. Some of the trainings and policies on emergency evacuations and what to do when are dictated by how the space is designed, and the breakup of the classroom. So even some of those skills and expectations down there are unique from location to location for Grace Church. So I don't know if that answered the question or not, but we do have Ministry Library does have a set of what we call leadership workshops that will help you identify and train these different skills in the leadership pipeline. Again, each church is unique. So Ministry Library at this point has a little over 160 of those leadership workshops to help in that training of those higher level leaders. Down here, you're doing a lot of actual trainings. Above this line, you're doing what's called apprenticing. And so this takes a little bit more time, and it really uses that model that Jesus has with the 4 T's. You're going to show a video. This is how our workshops work. You'll show a video. Then there's a 45-minute discussion that is clearly focused on how to apply the one thing that you just learned about together. And then you'll let them go try it for a month. And then what we recommend is having a monthly rhythm of these leadership development meetings where you're using a workshop every single month. And then what we've done is we've put those workshops into what we call a roadmap. So you can choose different roadmaps anywhere from 6 months to 9 months long that give you a development path to help train and apprentice these different leaders at different levels. I think you're muted, Kenny.
Zoom loves to mute me all the time. So Paul is asking, is it possible to get a copy of a completed worksheet for reference? Like, what does it look like? I think inside Ministry Library, you're able to get that type of thing, right? Maybe we transition to the next slide to move to answer that question.
Yeah, so that is probably the number one question that I get asked.
Yeah.
Um, and my answer, you're not going to like, Paul, is every church is unique. And so as soon as you see something from another church, it's very hard for you to come up with something creative on your own. But every church culture, um, the staffing that you have currently, the gifts that are present in the leadership team are all different. And so skills, expectations, names, core competencies, all those things will be very unique to a church. But we do have, I'll go here, like these leadership pipelines that are these
Workshops.
workshops that we have will help you identify those specifically. Um, yeah, so this you could build it out on your own, this the leadership pipeline with that fill in the blank paper that we have, and you can define all the stages and get buy-in from different leaders and get feedback. Then you can start to create your own training content. Lots of people will use um, books, blog posts, podcasts, TED Talks, or even write some of their own things for trainings. But it does take a long time, and it took us a long time for Grace Church to build this stuff out. And so, what Ministry Library was born out of this idea of helping churches with this leadership pipeline. And so we have over 160 of these workshops led by a lot of different people. Carrie Newhoff, Clay Scroggins, Rich Birch, may have heard of some of these other people. And like I said, it's a 15-minute video teaching along with a 45-minute guide that will help you learn together. These are some of the workshops that we have. So effective ways to recruit volunteers, how to see hidden growth barriers, what do you do when you need to build a healthy culture. Jenny Catron, one of the most popular ones is this one, how to lead through chaos. That's a really good discussion where she gives you some really practical things, and then the discussion guide actually leads your team through identifying the last five crisis that your church went through, and then how to make an action plan to lead through those crises. We had Tyler from Texan Church talk through what's the ideal follow-up sequence for your church for our first-time guests, how to develop the people who are developing leaders. So this is just a little bit of the workshops that Ministry Library has.
And Brian, just again, how many workshops are there total?
I think there's 167 the
Yeah.
last
So you
time
can
I
almost
counted.
go through one every other day, 7 days a week throughout the entire year. So you're going to be able to go in, cherry pick, and curate your own journey for your own
Yeah.
staff members, right?
Well, yeah. And if you think about it, I mean, they're kind of weighty. So if you think about that one with the crisis, identifying the five most recent crisis that your church went through, creating this playbook essentially for how to lead through those things, you can't do that stuff every week. So that's why we say it's best to get in a rhythm of doing it once a month. So if you did it once a month, you're talking about 167 months worth of leadership workshops before you would exhaust everything. Um, and that would assume that we don't add anything else. Um, but yeah, so this is Dave Robertson. He is a longtime uh, Ministry Library member, and his biggest thing is it's just winning back time, right? He's a busy pastor. He knows that he should be developing leaders, but again, it's one of those things. It's not falling on the urgent; it's an important, and so Ministry Library gives him that solution to help him as a busy pastor train the people that he knows he should be investing in and training, but also not taking up a ton of time. Um, so uh, I've never done this before with Ministry Library. Um, I'm bundling a bunch of stuff together and giving like a huge discount. So the workshop library that we have, like I said, that's 167 um, workshops that you can use, and we have roadmaps that group these um, different workshops together in useful ways so that you can literally just pick one and start your journey of leading your teams. That's normally $348 a year. And so we're going to give a pretty big discount. I was talking with Kenny um, before the webinar, and he was kind of shocked at the discount of this, but
Yeah.
we're not only going to do
I thought you were going to come and
the
just do like a 10% discount or something. That was,
yeah, no, and then I talked to Michael too, and he thought this was kind of crazy. But we're also going to throw in the pipeline masterclass. The masterclass, this was just literally not even scratching the surface of the leadership pipeline. We have a what's called a masterclass. It's 8 sessions. Each session is about 20 minutes, and then there's a group, a facilitator's guide. So it's actually meant to be like a in-house conference. So instead of going to a conference, you can host your own conference. And churches are doing this every month with Ministry Library content. They're hosting their own mini conference for their leaders. And this specific one has 8 sessions, 8 main sessions, and application guides. And it gives you, as the pastor, a facilitator guide on how to run this full day training. And by the end of the day, we will walk through every single thing you need to fill out that leadership pipeline. We'll go way more into depth. We'll give more examples. We'll cover core competencies more, roles, titles. We'll give specific skills. And then we have other experts in different areas that will talk about each level of the leadership pipeline in depth. That's normally $197, but we're going to throw that one in as well to this webinar bonus. I've never done a webinar, so I don't know. Maybe it's too much. But we also have something in Ministry Library that we started last year, and it's this book summaries. So we have over 100 different book summaries for pastors that take ministry books and business leadership books and strategy books, and we distill all the best information and give it to you in about a 10-page PDF. And so we'll throw all of that stuff in. Normally, that would be a total of $644, with this being a recurring yearly membership. But I was talking with Kenny. We're going to do it for the webinar for $299. So it ends up being like a 50-something%
yeah, it's more
discount.
than 50% off. Again, I thought you were doing
Yeah.
10%, 50% off today. That's what we originally were expecting, and then you showed
Yeah.
up. I think, and again, I will say this. I respect Brian a lot. I think his heart really is he's trying to help literally thousands of churches. How do we get this leadership pipeline concept to be actually installed? The more ministries that adopt this, you can just see the more ministries are going to have success and impact across their entire community. And so, Brian, thank you so much for being generous with everybody that's showing up here today.
Yeah, I just put the link to that page for the discount in the chat. But ministrylibrary.com/webinar checkout. I also wanted to show you guys a little bit, kind of peek behind the curtain on what some of these things are. So like this is what our book notes look like, the book summaries. When you go to that page, it's literally just a library of books. Some are Christian, some are not. And then this is like the front page of one of the book summaries on the Working Genius by Patrick Lencioni.
I
You get
believe
the
it has
big,
some discussion questions also in your book summaries, right?
yeah. So we give you the big idea, which is here. We go into major themes of the book. Then we go to practical takeaways. And then we end it with usually about 20 to 25 application questions. So one of the like um, mantras or guiding principles that I have in my life, my own personal life, but then, I um, infuse this into what Ministry Library does is I feel like pastors take notes all the time. Like we take notes about things all the time, but notes don't change anything. So I always say like stop taking notes and start taking action. And so all of our stuff is leading to application, not just it's good to know stuff, but like these six working geniuses. Okay, now that you know this, how can you apply these six working geniuses to your staff to help your staff do more and accomplish more? Um, so yeah, application over just knowledge. So this is our book notes, and I think there's like 110 book notes, and we're adding more. Um,
I love them.
this is an example of one of our roadmaps. So this is a 6 month roadmap about building great culture. It starts with Jenny Catron building great culture. Then we have one from Sean Lovejoy about how to foster a healthy team culture, which is different than building a healthy church culture. We then do one on the four disciplines that create organizational health, um, team cohesiveness, clarity, communication. We also do five keys to creating a great team culture. So this again is Jenny Catron. She talks a lot about culture. Um, Creating a culture of leadership development, and then how do we build a culture of generosity? So we go through how to build good, you know, uh, culture as a church, but then how do we actually build team culture? And then how do we get some of these cultures to the church specifically of leadership development, getting more volunteers, what that looks like, and a culture of generosity. So that's just one of our roadmaps. And this, if you did all of these, this would take you 6 months to watch one, apply it, come back, watch the next one, apply it, come back. So that's a 6 month roadmap on building a great culture. But that's just one of our roadmaps. And then this is what the master class would look like. So we have a facilitator's guide that will actually walk you through how to have that 1 day kind of training session or kind of mini conference. Then the discussion guides that you can print off and hand out to your teams. And it goes through different group activities that you'll be doing in between these different sessions. And then it gives you some tips on brainstorming on how to lead some of those kind of creative or active learning group exercises. And then these are the different sessions that we have. So, how to build a leadership pipeline, the essentials of a leadership pipeline, leading yourself well, leading others well. So now we're going through the actual roles of each of those levels, right? Leading yourself well, leading others well, developing leaders, developing people who develop leaders, building healthy systems, building healthy culture, right? So you can see how this is just a way in-depth way to build this pipeline, much more than what we were able to cover in this webinar.
Awesome. Um, so I just want to say one thing because I've been inside the ministry library. Those um, basically, can you go back to the one with Jenny Catron on culture? I want to make sure this is not just a library of videos, right? But this is an actual curriculum that has been curated. So it's not all these random topics. It is meant for the pastor to remove the work of having to curate and pull together all the lessons and resources and things like that for each of the meetings. So it's almost like you can set it and forget it. You just schedule the meetings, you show up, you facilitate, and you walk your teams through it. So I think this is a little bit a unique differentiator in terms of value for the system and platform that you guys have built here at Ministry Library, Brian.
Yeah, one of the things that I keep hearing from pastors who are using this is sometimes pastors are they know what needs to happen next, but sometimes their teams don't necessarily agree, or maybe they don't see the pastor as an expert at something. What Ministry Library allows you to do is you can go through one of these roadmaps, obviously, and pick those, but you can also kind of do a la carte and search through our library, pick something that you know your team needs to work on, and now you're showing it as you're bringing in almost a third party expert to come into the room to teach you all how to do something, and then you as the pastor can curate that group discussion to really lead the team exactly where you know they should be going. But it's just a much more I guess collaborative way to learn, because you're learning together, and then you're applying together. So that's like just a really cool piece of feedback we keep getting
Yeah.
from people.
Dave just put the link in the chat. I asked, or Dave asked, I put the link in the chat so that you can get this. This is not a public page. It's a specific page made for all of our webinar attendees that you can get the library, the pipelines, the book summaries, all that together. And so you can check out on that page. And just to let you know, again, I think in terms of the way Brian is positioned this for churches, he's building this because he's used all these things in his own church. That he's even offering 100% money back guarantee. It's on that page. You can read it. And so there's really no risk. I think the number one thing that we're trying to do with platforming these resources and partners with this ongoing series of webinars is we're trying to make it dead simple for you to try new things that we find effective and best practices to really grow your church and create more impact. And so I think the combination of making this affordable, which if you divide that by 12 months, what is that? It's 24 something. It's under $25 a month. So if you went out and treated your staff to one meeting a month and you dropped $25, this would be the equivalent of that. That is affordable because it's more than one meeting's worth. You get tons of this stuff, both for you personally, as well as your staff, etc. Can we pay monthly is a question, Brian. How does that work? How does payments work?
This is only yearly, so no monthly options, but a one-time, um, or not a one. It's a $299 a year.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And again, I think the that's the point. Like you can go in and try it. If you don't like it, you can get out and then request a refund. And Brian's and his team will actually refund that. So this is my number one suggestion is if there's anything of value in the resources that he previewed, and that's outside of just that pipeline worksheet that he talked to you about and all that the masterclass on that. If there are all these other things, if anything of you intrigues you, I would go ahead and get it because it's 100% money back guarantee. We've removed all the risk. That's what Brian has told us coming into this thing. So we want you to try it out and then give us feedback. We'd love to hear on my side. I'd love to hear what do you like about it? What's the strength of it? I know Diane above said that she loved the book summaries. That was valuable to her. Diane says, "Oh, you haven't gone into the summaries. You're just excited looking over the topics." I think you're going to be quite surprised. It's different than other executive book summary services, and I think the other part is that because they're written in a way that it knows the context of your church leader, and that you might have a book club or do something with your staff. There's discussion guides. The way that it breaks it down over the multiple pages for each book is quite different than just a sterile book summary. Again, this is all with leadership development in mind. Okay, we're going to round out this webinar. Any other questions? We've got still about a couple dozen people on the line here. What other questions do you have for Brian specifically about the pipeline stuff that he shared today, or this resource, this treasure chest of ministry library? What questions do you have? Leave it in the chat, and we'll take care of it for you today. Again, copy down this link and make sure you take care of it. It's the offer will expire, so it's not permanent. So again, just encourage you to try it out today. There is no risk involved at all. And on my side, Brian, thank you so much for being with us today. I think we need to have you back again to dive into some of these other topics across leadership development. I think you have so many great methodologies and approaches to actually managing teams, managing ministries, growth, and we'll have to tap your wisdom in a future session if that's okay with you.
Yeah, I would love that.
The deadline right now, I think it's to Brian, is it to the end of next week? Or is it the end of
I
this
think
week?
it's, yeah, next Friday, I think
Yeah.
is what you guys said.
Yeah. So I think you want to get in there. You don't want to lose this discount. He's never done this discount before. This is actually, yeah, I mean, you would even think 50% was the max, but you went beyond 50% off, which is still shocking to me. So you're not going to see this offer publicly out there. So anyway, thank you for joining us. My email address is kenny@ministrylink.com if you want to give me feedback. And also, what are the topics you want Brian to go into if we have him next, or other topics in general in terms of church leadership, church growth, church development? We would love to hear what's of interest to you, what would be of value for our next webinar and our next training for you guys. But till then, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you online. We will send out an email with a recap, with the recording and the worksheet, and hopefully you'll take advantage of the offer, and we'll see you inside Ministry Library. Thank you, everybody.